Hello students, today we'll be continuing our lessons on transport system in animals, the circulatory systems. On this episode, we'll be looking at blood and blood vessels. Blood flows around the body in a system of tube-like blood vessels arranged in a way that they all lead back to the heart. Arteries have thick walls, thick outer walls, and thick layer of muscle and elastic fibers. A narrow central tube called lumen, and then veins have an outer wall of thin layer of muscles, elastic fibers as well, and wide central tube. Capillary walls are only one cell thick and are highly branched to cover enormous surface area. This eases diffusion and then, so we have to drag the text to the appropriate portion of this diagram. This diagram is showing us the artery, the red colored artery, the blue colored artery, and then the capillaries joining the tubes, arteries, and the veins together. So we're going to drop these boxes in the right sections according to the characteristics of each tube. Blood is rich in oxygen. We only find blood rich in oxygen in the arteries. The vein has high concentration of waste products because it carries deoxygenated blood. The capillaries are highly branched and cover an enormous surface area. The veins also have valves that prevent the backflow of blood. The site of exchange of materials between the blood and tissue is the capillaries, and then what has a network that extends through all tissues? That should be the capillaries as well. Okay. So we still continue. What carries blood from the heart to the tissues? From the heart to the tissues, that would be the arteries. Remember that we're trying to learn the properties of each tube. Carries blood from blood is low in oxygen. We find blood low in oxygen in the veins. Carries blood from tissues to the heart. That's the vein as well. Blood is at low pressure in the veins. Remember in the previous lesson, I mentioned it that blood flows out of the body in high pressure from the arteries, and it flows back into the body in low pressure from the veins, constantly supplied with fresh blood. Yes, that's the capillaries. The capillaries are always, and it is also a link between the arteries and the veins. I guess we assigned all of that correctly. So we have another image here showing us the heart and how and the parts of blood flow. We have the pulmonary artery. Unlike other arteries, we know that arteries are meant to carry oxygenated blood from the heart out to the body tissues. But in the case of the pulmonary artery, which is an artery linked to the lung, it carries deoxygenated blood. While the pulmonary vein, the lung vein, unlike other veins, carries oxygenated blood. They are the only ones that do a separate work apart from other arteries and veins. Aorta, the main artery, supplies oxygenated blood from the heart at high pressure, and vena cava, the main vein, supplies the oxygenated blood to the heart at low pressure. We also have the hepatic vein. This is the vein carrying deoxygenated blood from the liver, and the renal artery. This is the artery connected to the kidney, and it carries oxygenated blood to the kidneys. Blood is the circulatory medium in humans. We've said that before. And then the average adult human has about 5 dm cube of blood, which contains a number of blood cells suspended in a watery liquid called plasma. If a sample of blood taken from the blood is allowed to stand, it separates into layers of its components, which are plasma, white blood cells, platelets, red blood cell. Plasma, white blood cell, platelets, red blood cell. Oh, the reason the red blood cell is coming last is because it tends to be the most dense, so it is at the lowest part of the component. Red blood cells are small and flexible and can squeeze through narrow capillaries. It contains hemoglobin, an iron containing pigment which picks up oxygen at the lungs and lets go of it at the tissues. It has no nucleus, thereby leaving more space for hemoglobin. Plasma, in its own case, performs the action of transporting dissolved food molecules such as glucose and amino acids. It also transports waste materials such as urea. The white blood cell are of two types, phagocytes and lymphocytes. The phagocytes are irregularly shaped nucleus which allows cells to squeeze through gaps. And then the lymphocytes have large nucleus that contains many copies of genes for the control of the antibody protein production. Platelets are cell fragments that release blood clotting enzymes. So we have a question here. What cells are small and flexible and can squeeze through narrow capillaries? It contains hemoglobin and iron containing pigments that picks up oxygen at the lungs and lets go of it at the tissue. It has no nucleus, thereby leaving more space for hemoglobin that will be the red blood cell. White blood cells, phagocytes to be specific, are irregularly shaped. Blood components, functions of blood components. This is an image showing us a component of the blood that helps in blood clotting, showing us the platelets. There's another image showing us the component of the blood that removes microorganisms that invade the body and might cause infection. That is the white blood cell, the phagocyte. Another image here is showing us a component of the blood that produces antibody proteins, and helps in the defense against diseases. The lymphocytes, white blood cell. This component of the blood is showing us a blood component that transports oxygen from lungs to all respiring tissues. This is the red blood cell. Blood clotting reduces loss of blood and seals the wound against pathogens. The mechanism of how this is done is explained below. Damaged platelets and torn capillaries trigger the release of enzymes, fibrinogen, an active blood protein on exposure to air. Fibrinogen converts to fibrin, an activated blood protein, which forms a mesh of fibers that traps red blood cells. This later dries out to form a scab, which closes the wound and prevents the entry of pathogens. So we have a question relating to blood clotting. Components of blood involved in clotting circulate the body, and then blood vessel walls are damaged. Component X is converted to component Y. Component Y forms a mesh. Blood loss and pathogen entry stops. So according to the illustration above, we have to find out what X is. What is X? X is the component X is converted to component Y. That will be fibrinogen converted to fibrin. So X is fibrinogen. Let's check. Correct. Choose the correct statement. Red blood cells transport oxygen around the body. Plasma carries oxygen. Platelets fight diseases. The only correct statement here is that red blood cell transports oxygen around the body. Correct. Choose the correct statement again. Veins carry blood away from the heart to other tissues and it has thick muscular wall. Is that correct? No. Arteries carry blood away from the heart to other tissues and it has thick muscular wall. Is that correct? Yes. Another question here is showing us simple circulation in fish, where in the circulatory system is the oxygen concentration the lowest. So we have the oxygen concentration the lowest in X. What is the function of a lymphatic system? Lymphatic system, in case I didn't mention it, is also the circulatory system, and the function is the circulation of fluids in the body. Which process is slower in a person with fewer platelets than normal? Is it antibody formation? Is it oxygen transport? Is it blood clotting? Platelet is responsible for blood clotting, so that will be blood clotting. This brings us to the end of this class. I hope you have learned one or two things. Please remember to stay tuned to our channel. We would always do our best to bring you the best. And we always put past questions for practice. You can check us out on www.edubbey.com for more materials and resources. Thank you.